Tom Brady has won his 7th Super Bowl in his first year with the Buccaneers at age 43. Really, that is a tremendous feat. I'm seeing a lot of people say that's amazing. At 43, he's competing with guys in their 20s, and he just won his 7th Super Bowl. It's truly outstanding. I'm not a big Super Bowl guy. I'm not a big football guy, but I can recognize raw talent, passion, and drive when I see it. But for some reason, we are seeing in the mainstream political space, namely the Twitterati, the journalists, the former resistance types, which are now, I guess, that empire type. What do you call the people who are in control now, who are trying to suppress the rebellion? Whatever. We're seeing them go after Tom Brady, and we're seeing them prop up Colin Kaepernick, a man who was never that great of a quarterback and who isn't playing and didn't win. They're literally trending Colin Kaepernick. Twitter is really, really awful. It's just it's an awful negative space. And I just don't understand why we tolerate this hive of scum and villainy and everybody involved. You know, look, I'm not innocent in that regard. I go on Twitter, I tweet my stuff, but I try to do better. Now, look, during the Super Bowl, an ad was run for Fiverr. Fiverr is this website. You know what Fiverr is probably. You go there and you can hire people to do jobs. And it starts outside of the Four Seasons Total Landscaping, which is the place where Rudy Giuliani had that press conference. Someone's adding in a sign. It says, "and press venue," clearly mocking Rudy Giuliani and many of Trump's supporters indirectly who wanted to hear what Giuliani had to say in reference to, voter fraud and that kind of thing. This lady then drives inside the building, and it's this great underground complex of Fiverr, and they make another joke about it not being a hotel. And I had to wonder to myself, why is it that mainstream advertising is almost always either leaning left or pro-left? And I'll tell you why. It's because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's because right now, all of these prominent Democrats are screaming, not even Democrats like blue check Twitterati types, about Colin Kaepernick and white privilege, saying Tom Brady only won because of his white privilege. The dude's 43, he's working really hard. And they're saying Colin Kaepernick, he was rejected and blacklisted for expressing himself, but Tom Brady's allowed to support Trump. It's unfair. Tom Brady didn't make a political statement. He didn't go out there and cause some kind of hubbub. Now, to be fair, I think it's entirely dumb what happened to Colin Kaepernick, too. If he wants to kneel, so what? He made a big PR stunt. It worked out really, really well for him. Congratulations. He made a ton of money. And he's got a bigger career now as an activist than he did as a moderate or average quarterback. So I get it. But I just don't understand why it is that all these ads, they come out, right? So we have one ad from Jeep that aired the other day. And it's calling for unity, the middle. We have to come back. And I agree. We do. And Trump supporters are mad, saying, why weren't you calling for unity when the Democrats were slinging mud, lying about Trump, and Black Lives Matter was rioting? And it's a good question. And it's because, let me issue a correction on Stephen Colbert's famous statement that reality has a left-wing bias. Actually, maybe a better way to put it is mainstream culture has a left-wing bias. There is a left-wing bias in the media that's being presented, in the digital advertising. It's confirming the worldviews of a certain group of people. But I'll tell you this. Are Trump supporters going to complain about Fiverr? They are. Are they going to do anything? No. Are they going to boycott? Not really. And if they did, would it matter? Probably not. Why? Trump supporters are not collectivists. Conservatives are not collectivists. And most, you know what, man? I got to be honest. I wonder if the issue is, on the left, you have people who will scream at the top of their lungs, and then other people see it and say, ooh, I'm going to fit in too. And they'll start screaming at the top of their lungs. Whereas conservatives are like, I see no good reason to scream. I'm going to mind my own business. The divide may actually be among those who want to fit in and those who want to be left alone. And so long as those who want to be left alone don't care and will keep shopping at the Walmarts, keep using the Fivers, keep going to these companies that would mock and belittle them, then it's just going to keep happening. That's it. Now, we heard that there's going to be, there's some boycotts happening from Trump supporters, Bank of America in particular, because they were giving away people's private information to the feds in relation to what happened in D.C. on the 6th. The reason that story was interesting is because some of the people who had their information spied on and given to the feds had nothing to do with anything. Basically, if you were in D.C. and used a credit card or bought a hotel, Bank of America was giving your financials to the feds. Anyway, I digress. There are some boycotts, okay? But ultimately, it always comes down to the same thing. Let me show you some of the silliness first, and then we'll talk about what's going on politically. Jack Posobiec said, I just heard staffers were actually crying in the White House tonight because Brady won. This other Twitter user says, I don't understand. I don't follow football all that closely. What did Tom Brady do? He's a Trump guy. I kid you not. That's it. From USA Today, Tom Brady has gotten an undeserved pass for his past support of Donald Trump. Why should I care? Look, I'll be honest. I had people tweeting at me, and they're like, I didn't see you defend Colin Kaepernick when he took a knee. And I'm like, because you don't watch my videos. I absolutely defended Colin Kaepernick, and I criticized him heavily at the same time. I defend his right to kneel in protest. I don't care. If he gets out there and he kneels, I go, yeah, I knew a bunch of kids who wouldn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance when I went to school, and I didn't stand for it a couple times. Whatever. Maybe conservatives really don't like that. Maybe many people were offended by what Colin Kaepernick did. And it's a really interesting shift in the language, in the culture in the last few years. Think about this. I didn't care that Colin Kaepernick took a knee, but there was such a strange reaction. First, we saw tons of Trump supporters burning Nike gear and boycotting. That actually worked. You see? Kaepernick was essentially cast out because he was a threat to the business of many of these teams. First of all, he wasn't that good of a quarterback. He wasn't bad. My understanding is that he was fairly average. And then he did some like trials or whatever, he was scouted recently. And then they said, he's just not that good. Why do we want to use the guy? The left now acts like it's some political slight, like they've been, hurt forever. But what ends up happening is a recoil in the other direction. So there have been periods where conservatives have gotten their way. Don't get me wrong. Kaepernick was basically pushed out. But now you have many of these sporting events, they want to open up with the Black National Anthem. They're essentially all kneeling now. It's been a dramatic shift in the last few years. The thing with Kaepernick and the ouster, that's what happens when, it's not even conservatives. I think that's the issue. It was consumers. Conservatives were definitely in on burning, Nike gear and throwing it in the trash and stuff like that. But it was mostly just consumers, and many of whom were pro-American. And they were like, I don't want this gear. And these companies were like, we're going to lose money. Something happened. And don't ask me what. I think it was partly a media campaign, many on the left. And now we're seeing a dramatic shift. Now in the past year, you've seen everybody taking a knee. Everybody. Now it's like there's that one photo of I think it was women's soccer team. And there's one woman standing with her hand on her heart for the national anthem. And all the other women are taking a knee. And that became like a sign of, standing up against the woke mob and defending yourself. Look, Colin Kaepernick kicked it off. He lost initially. But here's the thing. This shift is to the left. It's always to the left. And that's the point I was making. We have always stood for the national anthem. That's been the norm here. It's been the tradition. Colin Kaepernick took a knee, and that was, the dam cracking. Now, he did basically get, kicked out for, essentially bad PR. And like I said, not the greatest quarterback in the world. But that led to a tidal wave of massive change throughout sports culture. Interestingly, we've also seen ratings drop precipitously among many of these sporting events because people, to be honest, don't want the politics. But too many people are just sitting by. They don't speak up. So let me show you this. I don't care if Tom Brady supports Trump. He's a 43-year-old dude. He won. And now we have, look at this. Colin Kaepernick is trending on Twitter. Now, to be fair, it's not entirely because of the left. Conservatives are, derisively joining in, making fun of the left. The first tweet that pops up for the top tweets is Matt Walsh saying, with this win tonight, Tom Brady solidifies his status as the second best quarterback of all time behind Colin Kaepernick. Badumch. Mariah Carey says, happy Colin Kaepernick Appreciation Day with 60,000 retweets. Why? You see, the Super Bowl isn't about football, my friends. It is just a time that people turn their TVs on and they all talk about the same thing. That's it. So if you're a sports fan and you like the Super Bowl, so what? That's not why people are tuning in. They're tuning in for the advertisements and to talk to each other. And so long as we have this creepy left monoculture, they're going to praise a man who literally did not play in the Super Bowl. Welcome to Modern Culture 2021. Rep. Pramila Jayapal says, don't forget that the NFL has systematically villainized Colin Kaepernick because he knelt to protest racial injustice, police brutality, and anti-blackness. I don't know about that last part, but I can tell you, I'm pro Colin Kaepernick kneeling. I really don't care. And I think if people want to protest and make a statement, by all means, please do. I don't like the idea that like there has to be conformity. You know what I mean? Like we all stand for the national anthem. I personally do. I think this country is fantastic. And I think we've got problems to work out. And I like the idea of dissenting voices because there needs to be some kind of debate, right? It's almost like there's no real conversation anymore. It's just the left has our cultural institutions are dominated by the left. So there's no discussion over what we should or shouldn't do. It's just tribalism. You're bad, we're good, and thus we're going to do things. So here's my point. Everybody came after Colin Kaepernick, and I'm like, why? He's dissenting. Good for him. Let's, hey, you kneeled. What was that all about? Hey, man, have a good game. How about that? Appreciate it. Instead, it became this war, and a war ultimately that the right lost, resulting now in everybody kneeling. Now nobody stands for the national anthem. So, I mean, I suppose you can be mad at Colin Kaepernick for that in that regard. And I don't know what else to say. If you want to be a dissenting voice and stand for the national anthem and do all that stuff, then by all means. But maybe the real issue is you need to do what you did last time. Stop watching, I guess. We'll see how the ratings turn out. Jamel Hill says, in that Inspire Change commercial, the NFL forgot to show the part where they blackballed Colin Kaepernick, have only 3 black NFL head coaches, and no majority black ownership. I saw that. I saw that tweet, and I also thought something really interesting. What about how many Asian quarterbacks are there? How many Asian head coaches? How many, Middle Eastern head coaches? How many South American? How many indigenous? Why is look, I'm not disparaging Jamel Hill and her opinion on, whether there should be black coaches or not. I'm pointing out that it really just is people advocating for themselves, isn't it? When the people say they're for diversity, what they're really saying is for me, or their ideology. And so often you'll see, and it's very obvious, people advocate for themselves for obvious reasons. It turns out it's Asians who are suing universities and schools for keeping Asians out. Surprise, surprise. They're being negatively impacted, so they're upset about it. Jamel Hill thinks there should be more black NFL head coaches and more majority black ownership. Well, I think she's actually right about black ownership if we look at statistics. But ultimately, I think it's just an issue of people, choosing to do things and reaching these certain points. How many teams are there in the NFL? There's like 32, right? So it doesn't mean there's like 10%, black head coaches. I wonder about any other race. And look, again, not to disparage Jamel Hill, just to point out, it's all about people advocating for themselves and their own power. Here we go. Robert Reich, or Reich, or however you pronounce his name. On Super Bowl Sunday, it's a good time to salute Kaepernick for his leadership, courage, and sacrifice. I mean, I guess, but he didn't play in the Super Bowl, dude. All right, check this out. Over on Reddit, I saw this post. It went up 11 hours ago, but there's some interesting comments. They say, Tom Brady wins his 7th Super Bowl in his first year with the Buccaneers at age 43. And there's some comments that are just, whatever. He's going to start having coaches younger than him. That's crazy. They say that not many Gen Xers still playing pro sports. He was in the league at the same time as Emmitt Smith, LOL. Wow. Then they say, this next comment, someone winning a major competition in such a physically demanding sport at the age of 43 is nuts. It's a struggle for many of us just to stay healthy at that age, let alone be competing with people in their 20s at a professional level. This guy says, I tweak my back getting a LaCroix out of my mini fridge. I'm a year older than Tom, so he has that to look forward to next year. I don't think so. I think Tom Brady is very fit and he works really hard, and he won again because hard work, dedication, passion, and you can be the best of the best of the best, man. You know why they don't like Tom Brady? It doesn't have a lot to do. It does have a bit to do with Donald Trump, let's be honest. But I also think it has a lot to do with the fact that he works hard and he defies the odds. That's it, isn't it? I don't know a whole lot about Tom Brady. I just know that he's 43 and he just won the Super Bowl his first year with the Buccaneers. That to me is impressive. Look, I'm a skateboarder. I skateboard. That's about it. You're probably let's do this. I'll give you a name you're probably familiar with. Tony Hawk. All right. Tony Hawk, I think, is 52. Maybe he's older than, maybe he's 53. Or maybe he's older. I don't know. He still skates. And so he's on the half pipe going up. He's 25, 30 feet in the air sometimes, and he comes back down. Yeah, I think maybe like 30 feet in the air sometimes. Comes back down. He's very famous for landing a 900-degree rotation back in, I think it was 1999, maybe 2000. And that he was the first to ever do it, and it's a seriously difficult move. At 50 years old, he landed another one. He did a special video where he said at 50 years old, it was the last 900 he would ever pull off. And it's one of the most difficult moves in skateboarding today in like a standard half pipe. That's crazy to me. I look at that and I'm like, wow, man. I'll let you guys in on a not so secret. When you're a pro in any sport, I mean, your peak ability is like 20 to 24, if that. A lot of the best skateboarders in the world are like 19. And then once they hit their mid-20s, they kind of level out. Once they get to their 30s, they start to go downhill a little bit. And then by the time they're in their mid-30s, they're pretty good. They got the skills, but they're never going to compete with them young bucks. To see somebody win the Super Bowl at 43 is crazy. Because even in skateboarding, you do not see people that old doing, winning major competitions like this. This defies the odds. So the only explanation now is white privilege or not even necessarily an excuse, but they don't like him. They have to criticize him. They have to go after him because he embodies the counter argument to privilege. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter, to a certain degree, right? I'll say this. Let me simplify. If you work hard, you can succeed. It doesn't mean you will. But there is nothing about Tom Brady being a Trump supporter or being a white man that guaranteed him this victory. Now, here's what the left will tell you. They'll tell you things like, oh, but that means he had better access to certain sporting institutions, to training. He had better food and all that stuff. But that is a class argument. You see how they do this? How they try and take race and make it class. And then they say you can't deny the class elements of, racial justice or the racial elements of class war. And it's like, you're right. So you're saying the solution is class-based? Because I don't see how race-based solutions would change anything. You need someone who's going to work hard, and you need them to have the opportunity. And so that's why I point out the Jamel Hill tweet where she's talking about black head coaches. And I'm like, that's cool. No, legit. Express yourself, voice your opinions and what you're concerned with. And then I'll also add to the mix. Shouldn't we just have general diversity, a bunch of different people of a bunch of different backgrounds? Here's another issue. What if major football leagues, is it Major League Football? I don't know. What if that's just not culturally in the cards for many people? And what I mean by that is, what if there are other sports that are more culturally relevant to certain communities? And I'm not even saying based on race, but typically there's an overlap with race. I mean, you can take. I'd be curious to look at the racial makeups of the NHL, of the NBA, the owners of the NBA and Major League Baseball. What are the primary demographics who watch these sports? And maybe that has something to do with it. If that's the case, then all we really need to do is say, "You want to play football?" I will tell you. I'll tell you one thing. I read this quote from a football player who said he wished he played baseball because football is brutal. People get brain injuries, they get concussions. And then when they get older, it just gets worse. And then, people playing baseball, they play well into their 40s, my understanding, because, you stand, you hit the ball and you run. And so it's a game where you can actually play. Interestingly, with football, there are a lot of people who look to be very out of shape, but maybe it's more of a trying to gain, mass thing, right? So you got people who are fairly muscular, but then also pretty fat. And those are like, what is that called? Linebacker? I'm not a football guy, mind you. Here, listen, this has been a tremendous defense of Tom Brady because, admittedly, as someone who skates, look, I'm about to be 35 in 1 month. I'll be 35, and I skate. And I'll tell you this, to be honest, at 35, I haven't really noticed any difference in how I feel skating from when I was a teenager. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I've never, thrown well, no, that's not true. I I play it safer. I don't want to be jumping off buildings like I used to. I legit used to jump off of I legit jumped off a building once. Well, yeah, legit. I'll lead off a building. There's this huge gap. And I did a bunch of crazy stuff, jumping downstairs and railings. We call them handrails. Not the biggest, but I would skate much bigger things. Now I'm older. I run a company. I've people work for me, and I want to be more responsible. But I haven't really noticed a big difference. But I've definitely noticed a difference in watching skate videos from some of the pros I used to be like a big fan of, and to see how they've kind of chilled out and they can no longer do the crazier things they used to do. Still, they're all fairly good, to be completely honest. But watching these kids who are like 19 and 20 do things I never thought possible, I'm just like, wow, It's also a progression thing, like people are just getting better. But I'm also looking at some of these pros that used to do some of the craziest moves ever now in their 30s, and I'm like, that's cool. Like, that was a cool trick, but man, look at his video from 10 years ago. This guy was crazy. And that's it. We age. We get old. So I'm impressed by Tom Brady, even as somebody who doesn't recognize football. And I'll tell you this, the political angle of it is, we got this thing from the Daily Mail about, Super Bowl ads. They mock Rudy Giuliani's press conference, and the calls for unity actually have Trump supporters. I don't even know if Trump supporters is the right way to put it, but not necessarily all conservatives, but a decent amount of right-wing populists are kind of, I don't think offended is the right word, challenged, as it were. Definitely a lot of them are offended, like, but many of them are challenged, saying, oh, you're going to come to me, tell me now, you want me to unify with you? Never going to happen. It's more of a challenge, as it were. Granted, a lot of people are offended. Don't get me wrong. A lot of Trump supporters are complaining on the internet about how they're mad about these commercials. I would say that the Four Seasons total landscaping thing is meant to make a dig at Trump's supporters. And I think it's an attempt to marginalize the weaker of Trump's former base, or his current base, to be completely honest, those who would still support him in a potential 2024 run. I don't think it's that big a deal. And I personally don't care. And then I realized that's probably the problem. You know what I mean? Because I voted for Trump. I think the guy's got issues, don't get me wrong, but I definitely think he's better than Joe Biden for a lot of other reasons. The issue is these ads will never mock Colin Kaepernick. Even when he got roasted by people and they were burning their Nike gear, the media didn't come out and say, Colin Kaepernick, what a moron. Never happened. Now they're coming out and they're mocking Giuliani and the supporters who were there to see Giuliani speak to make them feel bad. I think there will be a lot of weaker populist right wingers who are going to be like, I don't like Trump. I thought it was stupid too, because they see it on TV. But I wonder, with Trump supporters able to create communities where they can surround themselves with like-minded individuals, and from that feel like they have a social safety net and social support, they will start to stand up for themselves more often, feeling like they are still part of something. The attempt from mainstream culture is making money for the most part. These big brands, they want to make money. But culturally, many of these resistance types use this and use these ads and push this narrative to deride and scare people who don't want to be the other. But from this, with the internet, we're not seeing a left and right based on politics. We're starting to see the emergence of tribes based on, I'm just so desperate to fit in, and people saying, screw you, I'll do what I want. And the screw you, I'll do what I want people will mock, and they'll be offensive and they'll deride. And the please, I just want to fit in people will say whatever the television tells them to say. So I don't know. The Super Bowl happened. It was a big news. So there you go. Congratulations, Tom Brady. Legit. Wow. 43 years old. It's impressive. And everybody else should shut up. And I'm just, man, I'm sick of the disunity. And I think my final thought on this is look what happened with Colin Kaepernick when people actually, came out and boycotted, it worked. I think that it needs to be more tactful and better coordinated. In the end, Kaepernick ended up winning out with a storied career in social justice activism and making millions of dollars. And now everybody's kneeling. So in the end, he ultimately won. But that's because the left machine is organized and the right isn't. They don't want the right organized. They want them in disarray. We'll see how things play out. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.